All right, everybody, we are live. This is Dr. Michael K. from the Center for Functional Health, and today we're going to take a little bit of a different direction. So, in the past, we've interviewed doctors and coaches and stuff like that, and today I want to interview Mark Belongie. So, I met Mark through what's called Meat Stock. So, both he and I are going to be attending Meat Stock 2026 this year. It's 4 weeks away. There's going to be a lot of amazing speakers there. I'm really looking forward to it. He and I shook up this conversation. I thought it would be really cool to have him on to hear what it's like to go carnivore. So, Mark, welcome. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to chat about one of my favorite subjects.
Thanks, Dr. K. It's great to be here.
Thanks. So, I want to start from the beginning. Not everybody starts out to be carnivore, and we were just talking about, the importance of eating vegetables and all that. So, can you share a little bit of your journey? So, if we go back 5, 6, 7 years ago, would you consider yourself carnivore? And we're going to delve a little bit more deeper into like how we define it and how it's a little bit different for everybody. But if we go back, 5, 7 years ago, would you say that you're following a carnivore lifestyle?
I had 5 years ago, I was not carnivore. I was trying to get more into a protein forward lifestyle. At that time, I was still eating a fair amount of carbs. We're supposed to eat our carbs. I've never been a big vegetable eater, so I know I should clinically, listening to doctors yell at me for not eating my vegetables for 60 some years. It's kind of reassuring now when I see some of the podcasts and videos of how bad plants are for you and how bad grains are for you. And I kind of feel a little vindication of, yes, I've never liked those things, and now that I'm kind of almost full carnivore, it's real easy to now just say I'm carnivore instead of I don't like vegetables.
Gotcha. So, but what was it though that made you change? I mean, like you said, you were never really into vegetables, and kind of somebody would say, "Oh, that's picky eating." But what happened, or did something happen that finally made you think like, okay, we have to move more towards making sure our protein's on point and following it from that perspective?
One of the books I read was the Mark Sisson book, Primal Eating. And that was a real light bulb went off kind of book when he really brought into full circle of how we ancestrally ate, not 10, 20, 50, 100,000, 500,000, a million years ago. And it was really a meat, saturated fat. We were using that word, saturated fat, and how that saturated fat is good for us. Meat is good for us. It's what we're programmed to live on. And we've been thriving on this way of eating for hundreds of thousands of years. And then as that started to really sink in, and I had the realization it's okay to eat bacon, eggs, steak, hamburger, and not feel guilty about it. In fact, I feel so much better in this world of mostly meat. My wife and I would say we're a little bit of keto-ish. Occasionally we make carb-free ice cream or a few other indulgences with allulose. But really we're both pretty serious about this lifestyle, and we both feel great. I'll give you a quick story about my wife. She used to be a vegan, big pasta, big rice. And when she saw these books sitting on the counter, she read a couple of them. This kind of brings it full circle. She loves puzzles. On a rainy Sunday, she likes to do puzzles. And a friend gave her some really difficult puzzles, kind of like the picture of a bright blue sky with nothing else there. So it's a really difficult puzzle with no little clues. She put those away because they were so difficult. And after, I don't know, this lifestyle for about 3, 4, 5 months, she pulled one of those puzzles out on a Sunday afternoon, and she said, "I'm so dialed in and so focused. I've never felt, I didn't realize it." And she just whipped out this puzzle, and she says, "This brain fog that I didn't know I had has been lifted in this lifestyle."
Which is fantastic. And we've had patients that have gone all carnivore, and they shared where that brain fog has definitely lifted, where they feel much more on point, where they feel centered. It is amazing what it does, and it's not so much of what they're eating. Yes, they're eating more protein, but it's more of what they're not eating, right? So that's where the magic occurs in what they're not eating. And to be honest with you, going all carnivore is in of itself an elimination kind of diet or protocol, because again, it's what you're not eating. Um, and then adding the fact that you are eating protein, the outcome is much better. So your weight experiences, this less brain fog. What did you experience? Did you experience anything different when you kind of moved towards protein forward kind of protocol?
Yeah, one of the things that I've noticed is my pickleball game got better. From a reaction, from anticipating my opponent's shots. Pickleball, if you've played it, it's a very fast game. And the game kind of really slowed down, and I thought, oh, I bet this lifestyle is attributing, because everything else was pretty much the same. And it's just been a little more enjoyable. I think, and this might sound weird, but my eyesight has gotten a little better.
That's interesting. That's very
And I've read a couple other antidote stories of folks who have talked about their eyesight appeared to get a little bit better through this, maybe the brain fog lifting. I'm not sure what it's attributed to. But it's just getting rid of bad carbs. And we know when you don't realize oatmeal, well, we must eat our oatmeal, our steel cut oats. One of the books I've read or one of the podcasts talked about from the neck down, it's all sugar. So getting rid of the oatmeal, toast, bagels. My wife and I, we like to winter, spend time in Hilton Head, South Carolina. Everyone has their favorite beach spot they like to go to. Everyone's got their favorite bagel shop. Yep. We were there for the month of January this year, and we used to go there twice a week and get a big old scrambled egg bagel. This year we went there once and split a bagel.
Yep.
So we got our little mini bagel fix in, and that was enough.
Yep. But that's all it takes tonight is just sharing it, right? I mean, I'm a tiramisu guy and I'm a cannoli guy and I want to whack it down like left and right, but a lot of times I just say, hey, why don't we just share it? It's just easier, so it gives me my taste and we get to move on. One of the questions I wanted to ask, and you can share from your experience, a lot of times people will say it's hard, right? They'll say it's hard to live this lifestyle. What kind of challenges, what did you struggle with when you started eating more protein? And that's where people get themselves really held up, right? They're like, how do I eat more protein? So what were your struggles like?
I think the struggles for me were, when you go to a Mexican food restaurant, sure, you like to get a big fajita platter, and I'm rolling them up in those nice fluffy flour tortillas. Yeah. So it's just eating the steak and the onions and the peppers. Occasionally I'll grab a small corn tortilla and put a little in there just to feel like I'm cheating a little bit, but just staying away from the big burrito size flour tortillas, 150 empty carbs, feel crappy an hour later. And I think too, especially my wife reminds me, when she used to eat a bowl of rice with her Chinese food, when she would talk about feeling crappy an hour and a half later, she now knows it was all those bad carbs working their way through her. So I think after you feel so good for a while, you kind of realize, well, do I really miss that pasta? We go get pizza once in a while, pizza by the slice, grab a bite of pizza with the crust, and then pull the toppings off and throw the majority of the crust away. So there's little ways we still like to work in a little bit of an indulgence, but it keeps us on the straight and narrow, and we're real happy with it, and we don't feel deprived.
All right, that's excellent. Yeah, I mean, we always try to move everybody toward that protein. It's funny because we'll keep track of what people eat before they come into the office as part of our metric gathering. And you can see, because we use a little pie chart, you can see, my God, they're just eating so many carbs and little protein, little fat, but they're eating what is considered or marketed to as healthy. and then we take their blood sugars, and then we look at their lipids, and we'll talk about lipids soon, and you see that it's off the chart. But they said I'm eating healthy. I'm having my oatmeal in the morning, and I add some extra fruit to it, and at lunch I'm having a salad, and then I have my granola bar, and at dinner I have my chicken or my fish, and I have it with spinach and kale, and then at nighttime I have another granola bar snack, or I have gluten-free pretzels. Well, they're not horrible choices. They're just not always the best choices for somebody's individual physiology. And when somebody weighs, let's say, 180 and they want to weigh 150, I'm like, well, you know what? You need about 140, 135 grams, 150 grams of protein per day. And they're like, oh my God, that's so much protein. And bad things will happen. I'm like, you're eating 300 grams plus of carbohydrates a day, and bad things are happening, right? So there was a lot of the false statements that too much protein is going to affect the kidneys, and even in Dr. Lyon's books, and you'll see the other books that these docs put out, that's actually not true, right? So you really want to make sure that protein is on point. So when you look back, were you always into like nutrition and health? Were you always like that?
Fair amount. One of the big things that was a surprise, and I don't think I've read it even in Dr. Lyon's book, a lot of the people that are very protein forward, they kind of stay away from fat. They don't want to tell you, in order for protein to really work well, you need some fat to go along with it to get the satiety, to get the, and I don't know the correct, you're the doctor, to get the best bang for the buck out of that protein, you do need the fat to go along with it. And that took me a while to accept and enjoy the satiety of the fat on the steak, maybe a 70-30 smash burger, being able to cook 2 pieces of bacon and taking the bacon out of the pan and just scramble the eggs in the bacon grease. It's like, oh, this tastes great, and it's good for you. It took me a long time to finally come to that realization, but now I'm all in.
Yeah. So growing up, we used to always save the bacon grease in a little glass and kept it by the kitchen sink because you used it to cook in, right? So dirty eggs is what we used to call them. You a little bacon grease your eggs and get that little blackish brown off the iron skillet pan plus the bacon grease. Give it great flavor. Bacon grease to line the pie pans if you're making a pie. You didn't waste. It's funny for me, and you probably have the same given, we're of the same decade. You hear people talking about, the marrow of the bone and, soaking bones and making it into them like it's what we always did. Nobody threw the bones away. They cooked the whole chicken. They cooked the whole turkey. It was just, that was just normal. The marrow of the bone, my dad would suck out the marrow of the bone because we knew that there's great nutrients in the bone marrow as well. So other than Dr. Lyons, I know both you and I listened to Dr. Ken Berry. Were there any other docs or influencers that you listened to that like, wow, these guys really make sense?
Doctor, he lives in Australia. I think he's going to be at Meat Fest.
Oh,
Chaffee?
Yeah. Yep.
I like his.
Yeah, he's got great podcasts too.
He does. Of course, Dr. Berry. He's so he's kind of entertaining how he talks about a lot of his patients can't afford the $35 a pound steak, and he's all buying hamburgers and hot dogs and Vienna sauce, whatever you can do to stay away from carbs. If it has to be hot dogs, he said an on sale hot dog's better than a bag of chips or what have you.
For sure. And we look at that, like the cost per nutrient, right? Like where you're going to get your biggest bang for your buck. We go to a place called Wild Fork. I don't know if they're down in your area, and it's frozen, meats and stuff like that. And they got fish, they got chicken, and they got bison, they got elk, they got rabbit, they got gator, they got goat. It's just all these kinds of, good proteins. And for $12, you're going to get yourself 4.4 ounce bison burgers. So for two of them, one you make for dinner, one you have for lunch the next day. That's what? That's $4. That's $8, right? So no, it's $3, right? So where are you going to get lunch for $3? You're not,
Mhm.
right? And you're going to get a big bang for that $3. So it really makes sense. It can be done. I think a lot of times people think, and you can talk to this, that if you're eating all carnivore, they think you're just eating a steak every single lunch, breakfast, dinner, night, and it's not like that at all. So
No.
in a typical day, what does your nutrition look like? What do you start with? What do you have in the middle? What happens if you want a snack? What happens if you don't understand, Dr. K? I need my chocolate after I eat dinner. So what do you go for? I mean, I know you make the ice cream. Talk about the ice cream and stuff as well.
Well, it goes really well on top of that ice cream, which is nothing more than a few egg yolks, heavy cream, and vanilla, all whipped up and frozen. It's very decadent. You melt a stick of butter in a nonstick frying pan, add a little allulose, cocoa, vanilla, almond, stir that together for 5 minutes, put it in a pan in the fridge. You've got the best fudge in the world, so put a couple pieces of that carb-free fudge on top of that carb-free decadent ice cream. And if you're down on your fat for the day, you can really get some quick amount of fat in a little bowl that tastes amazing. And I warn people, I've had neighbors stop by who like ice cream, but I said, you still eat a lot of carbs in the traditional Western medicine. I'm not going to this is going to be bad for you. If you're fat adapted, help yourself. And then they go, what's fat adapted? And I said, I shouldn't have said that. Let's change subjects now.
Right. It's much easier. Just I let them eat what they want to eat, and then move on. So what does a typical breakfast look like for you?
Couple strips of bacon, scrambled eggs with a little bit of cheese. I do some dairy. I like dairy.
Okay.
Maybe a little bit of ham, maybe a little bit of sausage with that. That's breakfast. A little bit of salsa. Of course, no sugar salsa, organic salsa. Lunch is usually brisket or something like that. Dinner might be a burger. Dinner might be a steak. We do like a half a sweet potato with butter,
Okay.
but that's about the only tuber. Maybe a little bit of grilled onion on a burger. That will do. That I do. My wife still likes her vegetables. She'll eat her shrimp. When my wife finally cooked her shrimp in beef tallow and or bacon grease, she said, "This finally tastes great." She used to broil it. She used to boil it, and it was bland. And she loves her shrimp now cooked properly.
So there's this thing called I think it's called ramaki, and it's skewered, and it's your bacon wrapped around like a chicken liver piece, and
Right.
Sometimes they add shrimp as well. So you got bacon, shrimp, chicken liver, and liver you get a big bang for your buck with liver as well.
Speaking of that, I have a question for you. One of the things I love to eat, and it's very especially when you're a little hungry, you come home from 2-hour pickleball and you're a little hangry, is I'll open the fridge and grab a tube of liverwurst.
Yep, people love liverwurst.
And cut a couple pieces of that off. And I haven't found anything. I like putting it on a cracker. I will stack that on I'm going to use the T word, a Triscuit.
Oh.
I'll stack an inch of that on one small Triscuit. That I'm sure I've got a couple of bad carbs, but I'm not. That's okay. I would love to find a way to replace a Triscuit, but liverwurst is sure great. It hits the fat, hits the protein, a lot of flavor.
Yep.
And you get almost instant satiety from it.
Yep. And the big question I ask is like, okay, when we talk about like working out and movement and all that kind of stuff, a lot of people don't think about fueling properly for the movement, the activity, and then how to fuel afterwards. Like what is your post recovery going to look like, right? So we want to be, hey, hungry, it was a good workout, we sweated, we ran, we did a whole bunch of stuff, we feel good, and we want to eat, but we also don't want to feel famished. And that's why we talk about when a lot of people are doing keto or carnivore, is to make sure they're getting their electrolytes in. So do you drink your electrolytes when you play?
Yeah, I do struggle a little bit with leg cramps, and I pound electrolytes like crazy. When I see you at Meat Stock, we can maybe hopefully talk a little bit more about some of the different products out there. I've tried making my own. I've in fact, when I was playing pickleball yesterday, someone had a new version of one of the leading electrolyte drinks that they're now using allulose to sweeten it. I think it's Body Armor.
Oh, okay.
So I hadn't seen that before. So, whatever we can do to keep the electrolytes going, especially with, is it the less insulin that we're releasing in our bodies in this type of lifestyle that makes cramping more apparent?
It's more of the magnesium, calcium, sodium that we need. So leg cramps can come from many different reasons, but we find that when we increase our electrolytes, a lot of that stuff goes down. So again, if you should be drinking while you're exercising. Electrolytes aren't just for exercise either. We use electrolytes for people that have brain fog, for people that have dizziness, migraine headaches, people who have that fluctuation in blood pressure when they go from like a sit to stand position, they get that wonky kind of feeling. So a lot of people just know electrolytes from, we're sweating and we're working out, but we find that when we can add electrolytes throughout the day, that's where the patient really can shine. So when you're not eating fruits and vegetables, you're not getting in these other kinds of electrolytes. Again, not that you have to eat, the fruits and vegetables. You can get electrolytes in the other way, and that's when people have like the keto flu. You've heard of that term, the keto flu, where they go ketogenic diet and all that kind of stuff. They're achy all over because they're not getting their electrolytes in. So that's so important. And then there's like my legs are cramping. So my legs are cramping when I'm working out. There's my legs are cramping at nighttime where you get those Charlie horses in the calves. So that's another situation where like, okay, maybe this person needs additional magnesium. And that's where we like to see things calm down with magnesium glycinate, like citrate. Sometimes we use a combo of things to get those leg cramps to calm down. Again, the big thing is, am I fueling properly? And am I fueling post-recovery? Am I doing the right kinds of things I need post-recovery? So I can recover faster, don't get injured, and also not have the cramps. That's what you're looking for. Like for some of our folks, after the workout, we ask if they can, eat a protein bar, if they can do that on the way home, just to calm things down. But also, whether you're playing pickleball or whether you're working out, a lot of my folks don't take the time to warm up, and they don't take the time to cool down, right? Because now I'm adding more time at the front and the back of the workout routines and of the games. Even golf, that's so important. By the time we see a professional golfer on the green, they've been there for a while. They just didn't roll up and start swinging, right? And they got people that work on them. And so that's important. I think it's where a lot of us, as we want to do these routines, we just forget the importance of warming up, cooling down, hydrating properly throughout the day, and that post-recovery workout. And how we recover at this decade is different than how we recovered a decade before, 2 decades before that, and how we're going to recover differently in the next decade. So, and one of our folks at Meat Stock, he does that. He has electrolytes. I'm looking forward to meeting him. That product, SALTR, Salter, I think is how you pronounce it. So yeah, I think that should be really, really interesting. And again, something so cheap and so beneficial and often overlooked.
Absolutely.
For sure.
One of the things that surprises me, and I've seen on some of these carnivore websites, is folks talk about, I'm stuck on weight loss. I've been doing this for, pick a number, 2 weeks, a month, 3 months, and I haven't seen any weight loss yet. The one thing that you don't see the question asked enough of, people are making this big investment in protein. Well, where are you on resistance training? You've got the protein down. what are you doing to build muscle? Muscle burns 7 times the calories of fat. A lot of these folks, we all need a little more muscle. Sarcopenia is a big, bad, mean thing, especially as we're aging.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to go into your 60s, 70s, 80s and beyond as independent as possible? Make the investment. It's not, and the other thing too, it's mostly free lifting. You don't have to join a gym. You don't have to spend thousands of dollars on equipment. There's a lot of things you can do easily. And when I talk to folks about, and I'm a big resistance training person. I love doing resistance training 2 to 3 times a week. A lot of people just look at you like, what? Only 4% of the world does resistance training. It's crazy how overlooked it is. And for us, people in carnivore and protein land, gosh, we've laid the foundation. Do something with it that'll really help that weight loss and so much more.
I agree 100%. I mean, so when we talk weight loss, when we talk a number on a scale, a lot of my patients, I don't even have them get on the scale, right? So because the number is not a true representation. Hey, you weigh 150. 150 of what? So tomorrow it's 151.5, and then it'll be 149, 147. It doesn't have a meaning. It's like BMI. BMI is a metric that we have to use. We use it, but to be honest with you, it's a very, very poor metric, right? So, I was speaking with a patient today, and I'm like, what have you noticed? My pants fit better. I am not bloated. My joints don't hurt me when I climb the stairs, right? So that's really important. Those are the wins that we want. I don't care about a scale, right? If you want a scale win, then, go on a drug, you'll get a scale win. Again, though, that doesn't really tell us what's going on. That's why I think DEXA scans are important, that kind of stuff, right? And working out with resistance, like you said, it's so cheap now. I mean, I remember before where, years ago, it cost a lot of money to belong to a gym. Your equipment is dirt cheap. My God, you can go on the Facebook and you can get equipment dirt cheap, right? But even, I tell people, you got stairs? Like, yeah, I go, we're going to do a stair workout. They go, what do you want me to do? I'm like, I want you to walk up the stairs and walk down the stairs. And when you get to the base, you're going to do 10 squats. You're going to walk up the stairs, you're going to walk down to the squares. And when you get down to the stairs, you're going to do 10 stair push-ups. And we're going to do this for 8 more times. You don't have to run. You can hold on to the banister. I don't care. We're not taking it 2 by 2. But every time you get to the base, we're going to do 10 repetitions of X. Just fill it in whenever your heart desires.
Love it.
That's what you want me to do? That sounds so easy. I'm like, go ahead. I'll wait. Let me know how it turns out. Halfway through, like, oh my God, right? So, like you said, can't go wrong with just doing good resistance work. It doesn't have to be crazy. It doesn't have to be expensive. It just has to be consistent. So, do you ever listen to Rhonda Patrick? Ever hear of
Yes.
her?
Yes.
She talks about the exercise snacks. I love exercise snacks. I'll tell that to 5 patients. 2 will go as interesting, 1 will listen. The cost investment is 0. At the top of the hour, 10 repetitions of a squat. At the next top of the hour, 10 wall push. Again, it doesn't really matter, but at the end of the day, what you have is 80 repetitions of movement. And what you have at the end of the week is 80 times 5, so you have 400 repetitions of movement. That means you got 8 in 2 weeks and 1,600 repetitions in a month, and we've taken none of your money and none of your time, and we got nothing but strength and conditioning back in, right? So you're maybe not going to get big muscles, but you won't lose muscle, and you're going to help your ligaments, your tendons, your joints, your tissue. You really can't go wrong. So I agree 100%. I mean, band work, dumbbell work, outside work, just you have to keep moving. But to your statement, to keep moving like that, you need a good source of energy. And a great source of energy is protein and fat. And it's not that carbs are bad. Carbs are not bad. Where carbs go awry for a lot of people is the overeating of the carbs. Like you said, you have a sweet potato. I still like onions. We eat onions. I'll still eat onions. We'll get mushrooms once in a while. We like that. But don't forget, they tell you broccoli is supposed to be healthy for you. And we have a lot of patients who we see with gut issues, and when we get them off the broccoli, they feel better. We have patients who are trying to do the right thing, eating kale and eating spinach and eating the greens, and I have the green drink, and then we get them away from that, their gut ends up feeling better and they have a little bit more energy. So that's why I think it's important to have these conversations, because everybody's physiology is nuanced. And listen, to be honest, we've had people that try carnivore, did not do well with it. Did not do well with it at all, right? That's okay. So it doesn't mean that they don't eat protein. We just have to change the way they do it. But we had a lot of people that were doing those special coffees, the bullet kind of coffees, the bulletproof coffees. There were sticks of butter and coconut oil and MCT oil, and for some it was a little bit too much.
Mm-hmm.
But do you do anything? Do you do coffee drinks or anything like that?
I love coffee. Just 1 cup in the morning. It's a tall cup, and I'll throw in there half and half and a little bit of allulose. And that's
Love
it.
Allulose.
Pardon?
Love allulose.
Isn't it a great sweetener?
Yep.
It's and I've heard too. It doesn't. It's of all the other sugar substitute. It's the best one for a number of reasons, and yeah, we absolutely love it. And I know folks talk about putting heavy cream in their coffee, butter, like you said, some of the other things. Just not quite there. I'm just happy with of doing that. The mushroom coffees, not interested.
Yeah, some of them are good, right? So it depends. Like, again, what is the goal? There's been a lot of great research behind Ganoderma lucidum, which is reishi. For immunity, lion's mane for the brain. So turkey tail and cordyceps. So at least they're research. So if that's how I can get somebody to do something right, and then we got to mix it in their coffee, I'll take it, right? Something that can start them, because like you were talking about how important it is to work out and do all these things and eat right. A lot of times people want to talk about longevity, but their body isn't ready to do the longevity stuff, right? They got to get that body more resilient and strong for them to take on the exercises of longevity, for sure. The biggest thing that people have is the cravings. So for you or for your wife, do you find that the cravings were kind of a lot in the beginning, and as you just kind of stuck to your system and your routine, it was less?
It was, it's kind of a stair-step approach. We like to stream. We haven't had live TV in 10 years. We like to stream a couple different shows. We usually do that around 7:00, and we used to have a snack, and that snack might be some pretzels or some other UPF, the ultra processed food that has since been. A couple of years ago, we're like, if you want a little snack, let's have a small handful of pistachios. Get a little feeling of fullness in your belly, but really get rid of this garbage, these UPFs. So we did get rid of those. We got rid of seed. Once we learned about seed oils, they're all gone. It took us a while. Canola is bad? What? Yeah. It's horrible. So now we're down to butter, tallow, bacon grease. Once in a while, we'll make a batch of popcorn, maybe once every 2 months. That used to be a weekly thing. So it's usually elimination over time. It's not a cold turkey thing, and we still like to occasionally reward ourselves for being good. I read somewhere, try to be 80% good 80% of the time. We're more like 90% 90% of the time. But it's still good to have a little bit of play in your schedule to reward yourself for all that good hard work.
For sure. And sometimes we're careful, because for some of our patients, the minute they get the sweet bite, just that can turn the brain on, and just it's hard to not stop the feeding the brain, right? So that's where everybody says, I just need that little piece of chocolate. We also talk about whatever you do on Monday, if you do it on Tuesday, you do it on Wednesday, at the end of the week, cumulatively, you've had just a little of this, a little of this, a little of this, a little of this. At the end of the week, you had a lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we take that same premise and we say, well, if you just did a little exercise Sunday, a little exercise Monday, a little exercise Tuesday, at the end of the week, you've done a lot. So that's a, throw it in both ways, right? So we think that's really important. So when you found that you were moving towards more of this protein kind of forward eating throughout the day, were you experiencing anything like headaches or joint pain prior to that? Because a lot of our patients, when they get that almost withdrawal kind of effect, and then when they get through it on the other side, they feel just so much better.
No, I never experienced any of that. Okay. Knock on wood.
Excellent. And then the next question I have is like, okay, and I know a lot of my patients, I was like, well, we're going to go out to eat, not going to a steakhouse. I mean, I know how I navigate it because I've been navigating restaurants for decades. But how do you navigate when you guys go out to eat if you're not going to like a steakhouse?
We just don't go out to eat like we used to. It's just not worth it trying to ask the waiter to put this together, that together. We like when we do go out, we'll go out for lunch usually, especially too, as expensive as it is to go out to eat nowadays, especially beef products. Yep. It's a lot easier to go get a $15 burger at lunch than spending $40 on an entree at dinner time anyway.
Yep.
So that's kind of how we're beating that is just not going out as much.
Yeah. We're very lucky. We've had some patients who are hunters, and they brought in amazing venison. I mean, I'm so grateful for it. The venison taste is great, and it's expensive to go out. Like you don't go out and buy venison; it's not on the menu, But again, when you talk about nutrient density, a big bang for the buck. So, are you open to discussing, what happened when you see your doctor and your blood work actually is improved?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I went just this week. And if I could share with you, so of course, my doctor, it's funny when you go into a doctor's office now, they have all these teleprompters. It's like you're caught in this drug commercial for 45 minutes in this tunnel you can't escape. And I was watching one of them in the waiting room, and it says, well, folks, you'll never be able to cure your gout. Nice. But if you take our drug, ... It's like, really, doesn't anyone approve this verbiage, the lies? It's just horrible to go into a doctor's office. But setting that aside, since I've been pretty much sugar-free since the first of the year, my wife and I have both been really strict about really watching our sugar, and that's so easy to do with allulose and other things. But my HDL from 6 months ago went from 43 to 51, but the big one was my tries went from 106 to 67. My tries to HDL ratio is 1.31 now. It used to be 2.46 in 6 months.
It's crazy.
You're the doctor. Is that good?
Yeah, we love that, right? So, and we've had that where patients' lipid panel has changed in this setting of adding more animal protein. And, I feel a good cardiologist should take a step back and say, hey, what are you doing? And that's amazing. And congratulate for you that. And then also be astute enough to go, okay, that's great. And we're going to monitor this again in another 3 to 4 months, right? So that's where the disconnect becomes, is like not understanding this is what's happening. And then we're stuck with, hey, come back next year and we'll do your labs again. Well, for me, I think waiting next year to do my labs is crazy. I take my labs every 3 to 4 months because I want to see that what I'm doing, what I'm taking supplement-wise, and how I'm working out, if it's moving the clinical needle forward. Waiting a year is too much. So, and I'm proud to say that I've irritated some doctors by changing their patients' nutrition around and making their blood work look better. So often we'll have, doc, why do I need to take this statin? Because my labs are doing better. Well, you got to take it anyway. Okay. So we can go back and forth, put 10 of us in a room, and you'll get yourself 12 different answers on statins. And now it's just the American Heart Association just changed their guidelines again. And you're looking for, statins starting earlier if need be. And, this is where the lab work really comes into play. So somebody's can have an elevated cholesterol, but like we were saying, that really doesn't tell the whole story. So we will do what's called a CAC study. It's a coronary artery calcium study. And that lets us determine what kind of heart plaque could be there. Because that gives you a little bit more idea. You can go another level up and do a CT angiography. I'm going to get one of those done because I want to see if there's any soft plaque. So what I want to find out is okay, thankfully the CAC score is 0, and I want to see if I have no soft plaque, which then lets me know that what I'm doing is working. Mm-hmm. That's how we look at it. So again, as I share, I work with a lot of great docs, and a lot of times they're just stuck in this world on what they can and cannot do. So yes, it would cost a patient money outside their insurance to dig a little bit deeper, and or the doctor can actually write for it and push for it. And sometimes the doc does, and the doc does want to get these tests done, but the insurance gives them the pushback. Not the doctor, but the insurance. So a lot of these docs I work with, sometimes they're just stuck. They know what needs to be done. The insurance company is not allowing them to always do it. So It's great. When you share those numbers, I'm thinking to myself, man, that's great. Whatever you're doing it the right way. Especially, again, the triglycerides rate number, they improved, your HDL's improved, your protective cholesterol, so we absolutely love that. That's really great. Would they look at that and say, put you on a statin? I hope not. A cardiologist would hopefully not say that because you look pretty good. And or say to you, hey, Mark, let's dig a little bit deeper, right? And that's okay too. And then you can talk about what about those, supplements that are out there. And a lot of people take supplements for their lipids and all that. Supplements are still the Wild West. There's some good ones out there. There's more ones that are not good than good, right? So again, if we're going to take a supplement, we want to be able to say that you're taking a supplement for a certain reason. We're going to look at a metric. We're going to look at labs, or we're looking at a subjective complaint. But we have to have some kind of, investment where a return on our investment that we feel better or the labs move in the right direction. And that's super important. The one lab I would suggest when we look at that is hey, where's your vitamin D? Where's your B12? Where's your hemoglobin A1C? Where's your insulin? ApoB, some of those other markers to really dive in deep. That's how you get a better picture of an individual. And then you can say, okay, based upon my labs, this is how I'm going to move forward, and we're going to check again. That's what's real important.
Unfortunately, where I live is kind of a rural area in North Georgia. We don't have a lot of folks like you that specialize in functional health. It would be nice to be able to go to someone like you who really understands this bigger 360 of lab work, all the tests you just measured. So I'm going to keep looking because my doc, the one thing she did look, she kind of glossed over those, and she said, aha, your LDL went from it's now up to 121. And then she started to berate me about donuts and fried chicken, things I don't even eat.
Right.
Watching those, I was waiting for her to use the S word, statin.
Yep.
I mean, I'm already with, I was going to pull out my copy of The Great Cholesterol Myth. And of course, I asked her if she's ever read that. And she said, no, she's heard of it, but she's never read it.
Right.
So yeah, hopefully in time, more folks like you will be practicing in areas where I live. So I can avail myself to this great panel of lab tests that you typically run.
Yeah, I mean, it's through telemedicine, it is amazing. It's a virtual visit. You just have to get, you get the labs done where you have to either go to the lab, so you probably have to drive a little bit, or sometimes they have mobile phlebotomy. where somebody will come out to your house and take your blood, like, life insurance kind of deal. You just got to find that right person that will do that, and then you do virtual visits, kind of like, what people do now since COVID. A lot of people are very happy with virtual visits. They don't even want to go to doctors. They don't have the time. So I think there's a lot of great stuff that's coming up that's going to allow people, no matter where they're at, get some really good help and good health help, right? When we talk about longevity and optimization of health, not just like, here's your antibiotic, or here's your statin, or here's your metformin, or something like that. So it's getting there. We've gotten so much better compared to even 2 years ago, right? So I can't imagine what it's going to be 3 years from now. It's going to be absolutely amazing, that's for sure. So I do have one question here to ask you as well. So, what do you think is, like, when somebody starts going down this road, what do you think is their biggest mistake they make as a beginner if they want to try to kind of go down the carnivore lifestyle?
Biggest mistake they might make. I'm not sure if that's a really good question. And you probably have had patients down this path before. I think going into this, maybe like my wife and I did, we kind of stair-stepped into it through elimination of pasta and rice and carbs, and starting to move the needle of feeling better, to go, wow, these baby steps, crawl, walk, and run. So when we got to that point where we were pretty much all in, we knew we'd seen the early results, and we knew, and it just kept getting better. Someone who's just going to turn that spigot off of pasta, rice, and bad carbs and do it overnight, that's a big shock. That could be the big shock to their system, that keto flu you mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they're going to be willing to stick with it if it's such a shock to them to do everything so abruptly overnight. Maybe it's easier to take some baby steps. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I like that approach. And then again, it depends on their physiology, because if they are diabetic or pre-diabetic, we do have to be careful with that everything in moderation kind of thought process, right? Because it might be moderation. Just on Tuesday I just had some gluten-free pretzels, but I only had a handful, and on Wednesday I only had it was only one tortilla, so I didn't have two. And on Thursday somebody brought in it was somebody's birthday, so what are you going to say, no to cake? I'm like, I say no to cake all the time, right? So I think that's the issue, where it's the same kind of ingredient, just in different shapes and forms. So if they're diabetic, then we can't do that. We have to find these workarounds, so it's not such a shock to the system. But if you're going to have a physiology that's pretty good, and we're just going to start leading this lifestyle little by little, it's great. A lot of times people want to feel like they need to shovel something, So I will also offer them, it's from a company called Kaizen, Kaizen. I don't know if you ever heard of them. They have what they call it's their rice. It's still grain. It's the lupini bean, and 2 ounces of this lupini bean, 2 ounces. I mean, it fits in your hand. Gives you 20 grams of protein.
Wow.
Yeah. So I make sure, if we're going to replace, wow, look what I'm replacing it with. So they get a good bang for their buck. If I say, again, we're talking protein. If I talk about goat meat, goat has an amazing protein count for only 3 ounces. It's like 23 or 24 ounces of protein for 3 ounces of goat meat.
Mm-hmm.
So I do start them off slow if they can, but if there's a physiological presentation, then we have to move that needle much faster, because we need them to be healthy. So
Sure.
That's a great question. All right. So as we wrap up, what are 2 things that you can say to somebody, other than get started, right? What are 2 things you can say to them? Here's something that's easy, and what is your favorite meal? And here's another thing. And then tell them one more time how you make your sweet treat.
The chocolate one.
Yep.
So you melt a stick of butter. I usually use organic butter, and add 2/3 of a cup of cocoa, 2/3 a cup of allulose, a teaspoon of vanilla, a teaspoon of almond extract, and stir that with a rubber spatch for about 5 minutes. I've got kind of a rubber, like a meatloaf pan. It's pliable. Pop it in there, stick it in the fridge for 2-3 hours. And it's about yay thick, and it's the most decadent fudge you'll ever have. It tastes like anything full of sugar and carbs. That is carb free. That is really, really good.
Very cool.
And I would tell, yeah, it's so good. And when Mr. Sweet Tooth is knocking, these diehard carnivore people kind of crack me up. You must stick to beef, beef, bacon, butter, eggs, and salt, and you must live on that for the rest of your life. It's like, what? My dog couldn't live on that the rest of his life. I don't, if I take a little walk down Sweet Tooth Lane with what I just described to you, that's not leading me to a dozen cookies the following day. It's like the Sweet Tooth knocked, I answered the door, we met, we closed the door, and now we're good for a few more days. That's fine. If you can't do that, then maybe you have to go down to Mr. Strict Carnivore Lane. But with people, I'll say, look, you've been lied to for years. I don't want to get into Ansel Keys and all of that history, which is really fascinating. And I'm a geek. I just love reading all this stuff. But try to cut down on all sugar. You don't have to go cold turkey. Cut down. Saturated fat is your friend. You can eat saturated fat. It's healthy. Look what we were eating for hundreds of thousands of years. Don't believe all this garbage you've been told for the last 50 years. The stuff about cereal, seed grains. We weren't eating this stuff 100 years ago. People, when we have conversations about the agricultural revolution of 10,000 years ago and how humans became smaller and dumber once we started eating plants, and folks kind of look at me like you're crazy. And then you talk about even more recent history, what happened with some of the Native Americans when you took away all the buffalo and put them on reservations in the 1800s, where that's really current. And within 2 generations, how Native Americans shrunk once they got on grains and plants and got off of buffalo. And people they look at you, they still think you're crazy, but at least they're kind of thinking maybe there's something to this. Maybe it's worth a try.
Yep. I always say to people, we don't know if it's for you. We're going to trial it, and we're going to see how you feel in 2 to 4 weeks. It doesn't have to be forever. And fortunately, when we changed it around, a lot of people really respond quite nicely. Now, obviously, it depends on their clinical presentation. Not everybody responds the same, but we get a lot of good return when we really start working on that protein, for sure.
And cutting carbs.
Yep, for sure. All right, so any words of wisdom you want to leave us with?
That's good. Thank you for your time, Doctor. This has been a great session, and looking so forward to meeting you at Meatstock here in less than a month.
Less than a month. It'll be great. All right, everybody. Thank you very much. There'll be replays as well. Mark, hold on one second, and I'll see you guys soon.